How do people get this so wrong? Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and today I'm going to show you something that can drastically improve your quality of life, both in terms of how you feel and how people think about you. I'm going to show you how to hold a door. Now, this might seem strange coming from a person who spends a lot of time thinking about how the bureaucratic system works and trying to figure out how to make that system work to generate the outputs that I want. But I think this is relevant for two reasons. Number one, competing within the bureaucratic space is an intensely human experience, and small, kind gestures like holding a door, well, they can help to soothe the abrasions of that competition. And number two, particularly in the Pentagon, most offices are actually secure spaces. The doors are heavy and they have a tendency to just slam shut, so that old saying about don't let the door hit you on the way out, well, it can really happen and people don't like it. So if you want to maneuver successfully on the bureaucratic terrain, doors are going to matter. And you would be amazed at the number of people who get this wrong. So much so that I think that people develop their own rules for holding doors based off of their experiences in, say, school or church or other social settings. But those rules don't apply in the corridors of power. Anyways, a good place to start is just by noticing that when you have a doorway, there are 4 quadrants. They're defined by the direction that the door swings, and I call them A, B, C, and D. And just to spoil the surprise, A is best and D is worst. Ideally, when you hold a door, you want to stand in quadrant A. That lets you open the door all the way so that there's the biggest passageway for someone to walk through, and in a minute, I'll tell you some ways to improve this position even further. But what people seem to do most often is position themselves in quadrant B. They partially block the passageway with their body, and this is particularly true with those heavy Pentagon doors. Someone in quadrant B can only push the door open part way. Now, granted, sometimes you'll get caught in this situation because you've just passed through a door and you see somebody coming and you want to hold the door for them. But my technique has always been to pass back through the door so that I can hold it from quadrant A. I kind of figure if you're going to hold a door, you might as well do it the right way. The problem with staying in quadrant B is that this configuration can force someone to pass uncomfortably close to you, even brush against you. It's best to be respectful of other people's personal space and consider that the Army regulation on sexual harassment includes cornering and blocking a passageway as examples of nonverbal harassment. Now, in defense of people who stand in quadrant A to hold a door, there does seem to be a strange social incentive for doing this, and I'll talk more about that at the end of this video. Next, you got quadrant C, inside the door but opposite the hinges. Just like quadrant B, this pinches the passageway, and I'd say that smaller or shorter people can't even really do this without blocking the passage completely. But taller people and folks with long arms, they can do it. And the issue is that in a lot of cases, the person they're holding the door for has to duck under their arm to get out. I tend to think that people develop this habit when they're used to being around children, but trust me, short adults do not like it. The other problem with quadrant C occurs when someone approaches from the opposite direction, from the side that the door swings towards. As we mentioned before, here the door is only partially open, and the person holding the door is blocking the passage. So the person that you're trying to hold the door for ends up having to open the door themselves, and you are left standing there looking slightly embarrassed. And then there's quadrant D. The person holding the door does not completely open it, and they block the passageway with their body. It's just a traffic jam. What's funny is that this situation arises in the Pentagon more often than you would think. You have some newly assigned major, and he opens a door just as a 3-star is approaching from the other side, and the major just locks up. 50% of his brain cells tell him to hold the door, the other 50% tell him to stand at attention, and the other 50 try to come up with something clever to say. It's a mess, but the answer is pretty simple. You just hold the door, step to position A, and stand quietly. In fact, you've probably noticed that my recommendation is always to hold the door from quadrant A. The advantage of quadrant A is that you appear much more in control of yourself. You're not some flustered minion just banging around. You seem much more kind and patient, particularly if you take the time to look somebody in the eye and talk to them. At the same time, I found that passing through a doorway was often a good time to do a quick self-assessment. As you pause to look around and see if anybody's coming, it's a good time to check your internal mental state, even if it's only for a second. But strangely enough, most people seem to have like a subconscious aversion to standing in quadrant A when they hold a door. I think that the reason for that is that if you're part of a large crowd passing through a set of doorways, at the end of the school day or church is letting out or the end of an all hands, that you can get stuck holding the door. Now, I argue that properly played, there is a significant advantage that can be gained from holding the door like this. And if you do want to break free, well, it's pretty simple. First, let's take advantage of the situation. And I do that by placing my heel against the door. So really, it's my foot that's holding the door open. That leaves me with both hands free, I'm shaking hands, and really, I'm just standing there. It's the easiest way to reinforce your network that I can possibly imagine. And second, if you do want to break free, all you have to do is hold the door in your hand and then slowly narrow the passageway until someone touches the door. Then you just walk away. I mean, in a big crowd, people are kind of expecting that this is going to happen. Ultimately, when you reach a certain position, people start paying attention to how you behave in all sorts of different situations and asking themselves whether or not you're right for future promotion. Small details can catch the eye, and if you want to see one of the biggest faux pas that newcomers to headquarters can commit, watch this video.